I'm Tony Sklar with bnetTV. We are here at the Broadband World Forum in Amsterdam 2012, and I'm speaking with Mr. Robin Mersh from the Broadband Forum. How are you today, sir?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Great conference, great expansion on the conference. We've been covering the series now for a while as a partner with Informa, and it's really great to see this year's bigger, better, brighter event with a lot of different co-load events as well.
Yeah, you know, one thing, it's kind of funny, but one thing I really like here is the fact there's so much daylight.
Yes, fair enough.
These years, you know, it's been a bit darker, but it's nice to be the daylight.
So maybe that's what I'm seeing is people in the daylight as opposed to sort of that downstairs day. Right, absolutely. Some hot topics going on here in this ecosystem. So why don't you just give us a brief overview of what Broadband Forum is as a forum in general, and then where it's come from and where it's going to.
Okay, great question. We are advocates for the wireline broadband industry. However, that doesn't mean we aren't very interested on the mobile side. There's lots of good things happening there. Our heritage, so we're involved in standards and specifications. So our heritage, though, is in DSL. But we have expanded into those newer access technologies. I'm now very much interested in a kind of more holistic end-to-end approach on broadband networks. So we advocate for best practices, for architecture, for management systems, and I think our history basically mirrors the history of the broadband industry. It started with DSL, or DSL and cable at that point, but they were very much two camps. And then you ended up having obviously more fiber services coming in. So we've done a lot of work in fiber as well, particularly in GPON. We looked at management sort of areas, and our management work was actually agnostic to the technology. And that's actually ended up pulling in all the cable companies as well. So now the Broadband Forum very much is working on broadband regardless of what technology you're talking about. We've got operators from all over the world and all different types of technologies involved.
So some would agree with the statement, I think most would, that innovation is the mother of necessity, right? And that being said, is the reason why copper is being really coddled back into the ecosystem because that is the necessity, or you know, the technology providers that came in and were able to boost up the amount of throughput that can go through copper, where those are no longer classified as dead assets anymore for operators? They're able to bring that into the ecosystem. Seems to be a big flavor here at this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say happenstance. So it's both necessity from the wireline telco companies, but also you know, just opportunity coming along. So a lot of the vendors have been developing those copper solutions, and you know, things like fiber to the DP, and you know, so G.fast, things like, you know, the VDSL2, you know, rollouts that are happening, and of course things like vectoring and bonding. They've been coming along, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, that the copper is of sufficient quality that it can be upgraded and you can do more things with it. But you know, it's also a sort of facet of the sort of fact that you've got like a lot of services that need more bandwidth, and service providers are looking at cost-effective ways of doing it. And of course, you know, it can't be denied that you know, they're watching their pennies. You know, they are saying, you know, do we absolutely have to roll out fiber in a particular environment? Now, it doesn't mean that they're not delivering fiber as close as they can. The question is do they do those last meters? And if you can do that cost-effectively on DSL, why wouldn't you? You know,
no question about it.
You know, so I think it's kind of both things. It's the fact that the technology is developed and the economics speak to it. It's come together at the same time.
You know, it's really nice to see again players within the ecosystem come together. You know, Simon Saunders has done a great job with you know, leading the helm there at Small Cell Forum, and so you sort of get this mix in the ecosystem now of, you know, we've got small cells. You know, we've talked a lot about the copper arena. Vectoring and bonding is a big flavor again. So we got all these players within the ecosystem who are opening up their data, sharing their data with each other to figure out better and faster ways to come to market for the end consumer and enterprise solution as well, because the OTT players in the connected home arena has really taken off.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so we actually we just announced the first interoperability plugfest for vectoring. So plugfest, just for those who don't know, so plugfests are basically where engineers will come together from various, you know, vendors. Sometimes you call them sandbox events. Sure. So, you know, the engineers come together, you know, they do it under NDA. They're basically making those chipsets work together, you know, make sure that they interoperate at kind of basic levels, and then you develop further from then, you know, you add functionality, you add performance. So anyway, the first interop event has just happened. So it's a significant step, first one in the industry. So this is a sign that vectoring is sort of beginning to mature as a technology, that you've got those first chipsets in the marketplace. And yeah, we think that's a very sort of significant move. And you know, I think sometimes people need to remember that. It's like there's competitors, but they do have some common interests. And that's the reason why people like the Broadband Forum, and not just us, other organisations as well. It's the reason why we exist. You know, you can compete with each other, but you do have common interests. And where you have those common interests, the best thing is to come together and cooperate and develop some things which help the whole industry, because it helps you, and then you maybe differentiate on top of that. But there's some great places where cooperation is happening.
Let's talk a little bit about the Olympics that just happened, and you know, where broadband sort of played a role in, you know, connecting people as a whole at a major global event, and then how that's going to transpire into other global events.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, wasn't it? You know, you didn't sort of like hear much in the way of complaints. You know, I don't live in England, so I didn't sort of, you know, hear this sort of, you know, live, but I didn't really hear there was much in the way of complaints.
No, there actually wasn't. You know, there wasn't a lot, let's put it that way, as opposed to past events. And
so that's really kind of impressive, isn't it? You know, the fact that so many people came together in a part of London that was actually more deprived, you know, in years gone by. The fact that that operators could step up and deliver those kind of services, I think sort of says an awful lot. You know, the thing actually really sort of says to me is that we can pretty much deliver what we need to with broadband. I think the question isn't technologies; it's a question of it's economics. You know, it's commercial issues. So when, you know, I think that's the reason why there's such a live debate around things like, you know, you get the whole thing of the digital divide. That's what you hear in England, actually, particularly in Britain. You hear some of that in Europe as well. You hear some of that debate in the US, you know, and that's where you have the National Broadband Plan. I think that's where the debate is going to go. It's so technically we can do things, but economically how we're going to answer those questions. And there's various ways you can do it. You know, different countries do different things.
So a couple of things in the show daily today. Obviously, talking about the digital divide. There's an article out by Telecom saying that New Yorkers have 4 times the speed of Londoners right out of the gate. So that sort of proves that idea of digital divide. Another article put up by bnetTV talking about is broadband a luxury or is it a right?
Well,
you mentioned the governmental policies, right?
Yeah, I find it hard to sort of say a right.
Okay.
You know, I just sort of think we should be a bit careful sometimes with language. So I wouldn't say a right, but I do sort of think that, of course, broadband should be delivered to as many people as you possibly sort of can, and there definitely are ways you can do it. It's funny, whenever I sort of talk to any industry organisation, or, you know, you go to conferences and exhibitions, typically the thing we talk about when we sort of say, why is broadband deployed in certain ways in certain countries, you say things like it's the economics of the deployment to start with, so that's one issue. The demographics that you're delivering into is another one. Geography, and regulation. And I suppose the last one is kind of investment. Who's making the investments? So, you know, you look at that and you sort of think, so different countries have done it in different ways. You know, you've seen major advances in places like Japan and Korea, you know, where there's been government intervention. Some places where, in fact, government spend. So in Singapore, Australia. You know, you've had very aggressive sort of companies in places like Japan and Korea. That's the reason why it's expanded so fast. In Europe, there's been this idea of concentration on competition, and it has to be privately funded. which is fine, and that could absolutely sort of like work. I think maybe the question in a European sort of like context is, you know, if you want to deploy it sort of faster, if you want to deploy it into areas where maybe the economics are more difficult, so in rural locations, then some decisions need to be made. But it's there are various different answers sort of like to that. But we basically support broadband deployment anywhere it can possibly sort of be. We are champions of broadband. We think it does have major benefits for society, and I suppose our only proviso is to say we think broadband should be deployed on a standards basis.
I like talking about standards, but I want to end off with one question here, which is, can you explain to the bnetTV viewership and to the people who inevitably watch, is why is it important to be involved in the Broadband World Forum events, the series as a whole? Because they're great, fantastic. I got to congratulate you on a fantastic series of events.
Well, I think so. So what's great about the Broadband World Forum, I think, is it does bring the industry together. You know, there are various events that happen every year, but I think this one particularly is, you know, you get the right people here. So it's a kind of an interesting mix of sort of technical people and more business orientated people, because, like I sort of said, the issues are across, you know, you know, and I talked about deployment. You know, deployment for broadband doesn't just happen for technical reasons or commercial reasons. It's a mix of those sort of things. When a telco is making, or an MSO is making those decisions, lots of things come into it. So I think the fact that you get that diverse group coming to this event makes it very interesting, and some of the debate is very interesting for that reason.
Well, it's been a great show. It's been a great series from even the past years leading up till now. Clearly, the consumers are happier with the ubiquity that is happening within the industry, especially in the connected home arena, where they're able to walk in with multiple devices. It seems like things are getting better, bigger, faster, stronger at the right time.
Yeah, we hope so.
That's the point. So fantastic. Listen, Robin, thanks very much for taking the opportunity to speak with us. Hope we get a chance for an update here soon in the future.
Great, thanks.
Fantastic. I've been speaking with Mr. Robin Mersh from the Broadband Forum here at the Broadband World Forum in Amsterdam for 2012, and I am Tony Sklar with bnetTV.